Broncos country, I am here with my week 2 studs and duds for the Denver Broncos following their 28-29 loss versus the Indianapolis Colts. And yeah, this one was a very tough loss. This is a game that I think the Broncos easily could have won, but we still played mistake football. There was a lot of mistakes and a lot of things that the Broncos needed to clean up in order to get the win. So yeah, we're going to be going over all those things in this video. If you do enjoy, make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel down below, as the support is greatly appreciated. And with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump straight in to the studs and duds for the Denver Broncos. Starting off, we're going to go through all the duds. I'm going to get the negative out of the way first, and then I'm going to go through the players that I thought made a positive impact in the game for the Denver Broncos. And for the dud, I'm pretty much going to go with the entire defense. There's a couple guys that you can name that maybe shouldn't be on here. I thought Jonah Ellis played a very nice game. I thought DJ Jones was pretty good. He had a missed tackle, which led to a Jonathan Taylor large run. But for the most part, I thought the defense played pretty poorly, starting off with our two inside linebackers. And man, we need Dre Greenlaw in here. Both Alex Singleton and Justin Strnad had multiple blown coverages and just breakdowns in coverage at the inside linebacker position, allowing, well, you line Pat Surtain up against Tyler Warren and against Michael Pittman, right? He was kind of moving around between those two. We'll get to him in a minute. But you had a lot of mismatches, specifically Jonathan Taylor going up against Alex Singleton. He struggled to cover him, and Jonathan Taylor and Daniel Jones, they just killed us. So to me, I am really looking forward to Dre Greenlaw coming back. And the inside linebacker position, as I mentioned at the start of the season, it is probably the weakest position on the entire roster, and it proved that today, right? Alex Singleton is going to get a bunch of tackles, but there needs to be improvement at the inside linebacker position because Jonathan Taylor and just the lack of coverage ability at the inside linebacker position really cost the Broncos. So yeah, Alex Singleton, Justin Strnad, going to be the first studs. Then Pat Surtain, which was very, very surprising. Pat Surtain was he was tested all games. Daniel Jones kept throwing it his way, and Pat Surtain kept giving up completion after completion after completion. So it was a bad and it was a down day for Pat Surtain here in week 2. And he was injured pretty early in the game. I'm not saying his struggle was definitely due to the injury, right? He came back onto the field, so who knows what happened. It could have been because of the injury, but I'm not going to say it was because of the injury that Pat Surtain struggled. He was being tested, and he was picked on by Daniel Jones. He was completing passes. Heck, there were some completions, though, that, for example, he was running with Michael Pittman Jr. on a drag route, and Surtain got a pinky on it. He was deflecting it away, and Daniel Jones just fitted in there perfectly to Michael Pittman Jr. to make the completion. I don't think Surtain was horrible, but it's definitely not up to the level that we're used to with Pat Surtain, right? Last week, in week 1, he had 34 coverage snaps, and he didn't allow a single completion. And this week, he was tested by Daniel Jones, and he struggled for Pat Surtain, so I have to give him a dud. But I'm not worried about Pat Surtain. I do think he's going to bounce back, and we'll just have to see what the injury was, and hopefully it's not going to be too bad and too lingering for Pat. But yeah, it just sucks to see Pat Surtain, a player of his caliber, the defensive player of the year, to have a down game. But I'm going to put him on this list because I'm going to be honest. I'm going to put my thoughts out there. I'm not going to sugarcoat things and not going to keep somebody off of a list because they're a star player. If they have a rough game, I'm going to say it and I'm going to put it out there. Then the defensive line, which is going to include the interior guys and the edge rusher, right? Zach Allen went down early in the game with another injury, but he did come back. I just felt like we couldn't get pressure on Daniel Jones. Sure, there were a couple snaps and a couple of dropbacks where Daniel Jones was pressured, but the only sack of the game came from a Justin Strnad blitz, right? I would have expected to see the players of the defensive line, calibers like Nick Benito, Jonathan Cooper, Zach Allen, to get pressure on the quarterback. Again, I don't think these guys are bad players. I think these are really solid players, but I was just very, very whelmed by how much pressure we got on Daniel Jones, and then also the ability to stop the run. It seemed like initial contact with Jonathan Taylor, we could not take him down to the ground. He always got an extra few yards after contact. So to me, it sucks. Allowing 165 yards on the ground to Jonathan Taylor is not ideal. Defensive line was not great today. You know, the defense, it's kind of like the Broncos flipped the script, right? Last week, the offense struggled. This week, the defense struggled. So it sucks. They bent a whole lot. They didn't break, right? They allowed the Colts to get into the red zone, but they gave up field goals because they bend. They didn't break, but in the end, they bet a little bit too much for the Colts, and they come out with the win. And then I guess the team defense, we didn't force a single punt. Now, my counter argument to that is when I saw that online, that the Colts have not punted through the first 2 weeks of the NFL. It's like, okay, but we got them to fourth down twice. They went for it twice on fourth down, and they didn't get it. So that's two scenarios where they could have punted, but technically, you know, the Colts haven't punted in their first two starts, so there's that. But didn't force a single punt. I put it on here, but I kind of am retracting that statement because of the two fourth down stops that the Broncos made on defense, right? So there's that. There's the entire defense for dud. Here's what we gave up to Daniel Jones, right? 23 for 34, 165 yards, one touchdown, and then he also had the quarterback sneak, the tush push, if you will, for a touchdown. That wasn't necessarily the tush push. It was a quarterback sneak. But Daniel Jones, he carved up our defense. He's looking really good in a Colts uniform. I still regard our defense as one of the best in the entire league. Maybe this week has changed that. We'll have to see. But I still think they're one of the best defenses in the league. And so Daniel Jones had a really nice day against our defense. Jonathan Taylor, he also had a very solid day. 25 carries for 165 yards and 2 receptions for 50 yards. And his one touchdown did come through the air on a wheel route from Daniel Jones. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor, after dropping the ball before crossing the goal line last year, he has just really made the Broncos pay. So yeah, it sucks, but Jonathan Taylor, he went off today, as did Daniel Jones. Here's also the Colts receivers. This was kind of crazy, right? I really liked our secondary, right? Hufanga in week 1 wasn't the greatest in coverage, but Brandon Jones, Riley Moss, Pat Surtain, Jaquan McMillan, Jahdae Barrett, they were all pretty solid in terms of coverage. And even our inside linebackers, well, they did give up a couple of completions. They didn't give up a whole lot, but Tyler Warren killed us through the air, 79 yards. Alex Pierce, 68. Josh Downs, 51. Jonathan Taylor, 50 yards. Michael Pittman, 40. And Adonai Mitchell, 20 yards. There were a lot of receivers who kind of went off for the Colts and against our secondary. So that is something I would like to see improved in week 3. And it's not going to be easy going up against the Chargers next week, right? It's the Chargers. Then you got the Bengals. We'll see if Joe Burrow is going to be playing in that game. And then you got the Eagles, so it's going to be a very tough 3-game stretch. You're really hoping to win this one, right? Because Chargers, Bengals, that's kind of like a toss-up game. I think we could win those, but they're going to be challenging. And then the Eagles one, it's like you're hoping you could win that, but they're the defending Super Bowl champions, so it's an uphill battle. So really, really tough start for the Broncos here. That's what the Colts receivers did. Going to have to move on to Will Lutz. Made all 4 extra points, but the one field goal that he attempted, he missed it, and it was a key miss. The Broncos, we were leading by 2. Will Lutz is coming on. You make the field goal. You go up by 5. That's going to force the Colts to have to score a touchdown on their final drive if they want to win the game, and he doinks it off the right upright. I still think Will Lutz is a good kicker, right? I've seen a lot of Broncos fans, saying that Will Lutz isn't a good kicker. He's a good kicker, right? He is a good kicker. It just sucks that he missed this one. I'm not going to try and police your feelings on how you feel about Will Lutz. I think he is still a good kicker, but that key field goal, I mean, it essentially changed the game. It changed the whole dynamic of that final drive for the Colts. So it sucks to see. Still like Will Lutz, but man, that is a tough field goal to not make and to give the Colts kind of momentum going into that final drive. Then you have another one in RJ Harvey. RJ Harvey had a really solid and a really strong week 1. And then coming into week 2, it's unfortunate to see. I know he's a rookie, and I still believe in RJ Harvey. I think he can bounce back. It's just tough to see. And you see the stat line, 5 carries for 8 yards, averaging 1.6 per carry. That is not great at all. But the Broncos kind of saw this, and with how J.K. Dobbins was playing, they fed the hot hand in Dobbins and gave him a majority of the carries. RJ Harvey had 1 reception for 16 yards, but I would like to see more from RJ Harvey, especially after a very solid week 1 and a solid NFL debut. It was kind of sad to see 1.6 per carry for RJ Harvey, so I'm hoping he'll be able to bounce back next week versus the Los Angeles Chargers. Then moving on to another dud, it is going to be the penalty discipline for the Broncos. We committed 8 penalties for 83 yards. And honestly, I thought both sides weren't very disciplined this past game. Both teams were committing penalties that they really shouldn't have. And the Broncos, there were a couple of key penalties that I want to talk about. The first one is the game-losing penalty, right? I think it was called on Yoma Wazirike in the game. It was a leverage penalty, right? It's a 60-yard field goal. By any means, that is not a chip shot. Just keep your hands off the center. It's illegal to touch the center. I guess the long snapper, technically. Just keep your hands off him, and he shanked that. It's not a gimme by any means. I mean, maybe nowadays it is with the type of kickers in the league, but it's a 60-yard game-winning field goal. Not the easiest thing to do, so having that leverage penalty, giving them a second attempt, and then them hitting it to lose the game, that's rough. That sucks. Then the J.K. Dobbins delay of game penalty after his big run, spikes the ball, and then gets called for delay of game. That one wasn't a huge fan of that call, but it's in the rules, right? So they did call it, and then that cost us a few yards once we got into the red zone on that drive. And then right after, I think it was maybe the play after or 2 plays after the Dobbins delay of game penalty, Adam Troutman had a face mask when trying to make a block, so that backs us up even more. And then we're trying to drive down, we're trying to get an additional 3 points, and then Bo Nix throws the interception, which costs us 3 points, assuming Will Lutz makes that field goal. So very, very key. Those were 3 key penalties that I thought the Broncos committed that really went to the game, or went to the Broncos losing the game, right? We lost the turnover battle, and then we committed penalties that you should not be taking if you want to win these close shootout games. So those were the 3 that I wanted to highlight of the 8 penalties committed by the Denver Broncos. But let's move on to the studs. Let's move on to the positive notes, the positive takeaways for the Broncos here in week 2 facing the Colts. And I'm going to put Bo Nix in as a stud. I thought he played really, really well. Now, the offense, including Bo in the fourth quarter, wasn't the greatest. Would like to see them keep their foot on the gas, pedal to the metal, and just keep applying pressure to the Colts. But I really did like how Bo Nix bounced back from week 1. He went 22 for 30 for 73.3% completion percentage. At one point in the game, Bo Nix had 3 touchdowns and only 4 incompletions in the game. Now, Bo only threw for 206 yards, right? Would like to see, obviously, that increase, but I don't think that's too shabby for him getting back into the swing of things in year 2, shaking off the rust. 206 yards, 3 touchdowns. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the 1 interception, which was pretty costly, which cost the Broncos 3 points. It sucks, right? And it looked like it was deflected, but I don't think the deflection altered the ball's flight path too much. And it was kind of an overthrow of Sutton, right? Just wasn't on time, on rhythm, so he throws the interception to Cam Bynum, which was very costly. But, it's going to happen. Bo Nix finishes the game with a passer rating of 111.2. Thought he played really, really well, especially after the week 1 struggle. Now I'm just hoping that the Broncos offense and the Broncos defense can put it in and play a complete game together to not give us heart attacks, right? So Bo Nix, I thought he played very, very well. I'm going to give him a stud for the Denver Broncos here in week number 2. Here is his passing chart from Next Gen Stats, right? You can see the touchdowns, right? The one deep down to the left, it's like 28 yards. That one was to Marvin Mims. You see the deep completion to Troy Franklin when he was rolling out. You see the Adam Troutman touchdown, right? You see the Troy Franklin touchdown, which was completed just beyond the line of scrimmage. So I thought Bo Nix played pretty well. But yeah, ultimately we come out with the loss, but Bo Nix played well, so I'm going to give him a stud. Don't know how I was trying to wrap the sentence up there, so that was kind of awkward how I tried to say that and present that information. But a stud I'm giving is to J.K. Dobbins and the offensive line. The offensive line played very well. I can't recall if Bo Nix was sacked off the top of my head. He might have been, just not recalling it right now. But J.K. Dobbins played very well. The offensive line protected Bo Nix very well. They opened up a lot of running lanes and really helped J.K. Dobbins in the running game. J.K. Dobbins had 14 carries for 76 yards, averaging 5.4 per carry. Of course, he did have a rushing touchdown, his second as a Denver Bronco. Right now he's on pace for 17 touchdowns, of course. We'll see what happens there. And Dobbins also had one reception on 9 yards and had obviously 9 yards per reception because it was his only reception that game. But J.K. Dobbins, I thought, played very, very well and is starting to establish a run game for Denver and for the Broncos to help Bo Nix out. So, yeah, J.K. Dobbins and the offensive line, they're both going to get studs here in week 2 for the Broncos. It is really crazy how the script has kind of flipped. The defense was getting a ton of studs last week in week 1, and the offense was a bunch of duds. And now here in week 2, it's kind of opposite. The offense is getting all the studs, and the defense is getting all the duds. Just crazy to show the week to week. And then Troy Franklin, he is going to get another stud. 9 targets in the game for 8 receptions, 89 yards, averaging 11.1 per reception, and of course the touchdown. There was that one Troy Franklin drive. I think we all recall what that was like, right? Bo Nix under pressure, rolls to the left, finds Troy Franklin down the field. Then a little while, I think it was 2 plays later, Bo Nix finds Troy Franklin. He takes that inside the red zone. And then I think another 2 plays later, Bo Nix finds Troy Franklin in the end zone for a touchdown. It was a Troy Franklin drive, and he really performed, and he really showed out this game, kind of showing that breakout that we all thought Troy was going to make this year after seeing all the reports in training camp and seeing how he performed in the preseason. Troy Franklin had a really, really nice game here in week 2. Then you got Jeremy Crawshaw. I'm going to keep putting my guy on here for now because he just kept getting a ton of hate and a ton of hate and a ton of hate in the preseason. But, this was my guy. Talked about him in the pre-draft process, someone who I really liked at the punter position if the Broncos were going to go after a punter, and specifically after we let Riley Dixon go to Tampa and sign there. Jeremy Crawshaw, 3 punts, 134 yards, average 44.7 with his longest. Well, actually, I don't think the longest one is accurate because I know everything else is accurate. I don't think I actually looked at the long. I think the long was from last week, so ignore that. That's my bad. But he did have 3 punts inside of the 20. Thought he performed very, very well for the Denver Broncos, right? So, yeah, Jeremy Crawshaw, I am going to get a stud, right? I'm going to actually look this up because let me see. I'm nervous now that maybe this is last week and I forgot to update what Jeremy Crawshaw did. I thought he played very, very well, though, for the Broncos. Let's see here. Pulling up Jeremy Crawshaw. Yep, he had 3 punts. His longest was 50. Okay, so everything is correct. The longest, though, was not a 52-yarder. It was a 50-yarder. But Jeremy Crawshaw performed very, very well, downing all 3 of his punts inside the 20 for the Colts, right? The biggest thing with Crawshaw, it was never the ability to boot punts. It was never his leg ability. It was the ability of hang time to let the coverage team get down there, and Crawshaw has improved on that. And so I'm going to give Jeremy Crawshaw another stud this week. And obviously, not something you want is to give your punter a stud. You want to keep your punter off the field as much as possible. But he's going to get a stud because he did perform well when he was on the field. And then someone who I'm going to give an okay to because I really can't judge it is Marvin Mims. He was targeted twice, had 2 receptions on both of his targets for 24 yards, and of course that touchdown to open the scoring for the Denver Broncos. Would have liked to see him involved more and utilized more in the game plan. I wish we kept utilizing him like we did at the end of the game, that final, 4 or 5 game stretch at the end of last season where he lined up in the backfield as a potential running back and made plays out of the backfield and was utilized heavy towards the end of the season for the Broncos. I would like to see more of that. Felt like after the first half, Marvin Mims was very underutilized, so I would like to see Marvin Mims involved more. That's why he's going to get an okay because, performed well when he was given the ball, but then we didn't really see a whole lot of him. And that's going to get me to wanting to see more. Cortland Sutton was only had 1 reception for 6 yards. Evan Ingram only had 1 reception for 12 yards. And Pat Bryant had 2 receptions for 18 yards. Now, Pat Bryant wasn't really expecting to see a whole lot of him, right? Sean Payton doesn't typically play rookies a whole lot, but had 2 receptions. And honestly, his first reception came pretty early in the ball game. And so I was like, okay, maybe we're going to see a lot more Pat Bryant this game. And then just never really saw more of him after that. Evan Ingram, we didn't see till late, picking up 1 reception for 12 yards, but he picked up a key first down for the Broncos to keep a drive moving. And then Cortland Sutton, 1 reception for 6 yards. Would have liked to see more out of those players for the Denver Broncos. But that is my list for the studs and duds for week 2 of the Denver Broncos versus the Indianapolis Colts. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comment section below. This is a very tough loss, a game that was very winnable for the Broncos, but they just shot themselves in the foot with the turnovers, right? Losing the turnover battle, killing themselves with penalties, right? Yeah, the Broncos just have to improve, have to get better on the little things. Got to be more disciplined, got to be more secure with the football, protecting it. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm going to be very interested. Oh my goodness, I can't speak. Very interested to see what happens on Monday Night Football when the Chargers take on the Raiders, because obviously we're playing the Chargers next week. So, yeah, got to get ready for that game. Got to win a division game, right? So, yeah, we'll see what happens. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe to the channel down below if you did enjoy. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Parker, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace out.